Yo, 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 hello, and welcome back to Lenko Show. This is episode number 97, creeping up on the big ton now. Today, I'm joined by Chris again. Hi, Chris. How you doing, bro?
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here.
Why are you arguing with me?
It's just one of my favorite pastimes, if I'm honest. I like riling you up.
You just want to wind me up, don't you? Every time we do the podcast, you just see how much you can piss off my big bro.
I think you're actually quite a boring guy, but when you get angry, I'm
I'm definitely a boring person. The thing
only
is,
kidding. I'm only
I,
kidding. But
I have to be boring because if I let my full demeanor come to the surface, it's not an effective way for me to navigate my way through life. It's not that people won't like me. It's just that I would be in a very, very.
oh no, I disagree. I actually think so. My genuine reason is like I think when you be who you are and you actually give your opinions, they're quite strong and they're very, very honest, which people can't deal with. We've said this before. We've had this before on previous podcasts. People don't like it, mate. I remember. So for all the people listening, this is a genuine story. When I worked, so Alex worked for Profit before me, and then I joined 2 years later, something like that, and we went to a combine event together, which was like an annual thing that we did. And the people that worked with me met Alex, and then like a year later or so, Alex, you were delivering education to people. And people used to say to me, they used to go, "How come you're nice and your brother's a dickhead?" And I'd be like, "What?" And it would always, mate, absolutely every time. I wouldn't like try and go to the absolute roots of it because I always knew what was going on anyway. It always came down to they'd done something that they should not have done, or they were late to an education, or they were talking over you while you're trying to deliver an education to 20, 30 people. And then you told them what was what, and now they perceive you as being a dickhead, which I actually think like, well, that's what you get.
It's funny actually, isn't it? Because like considering like they're the what like I've not told them off for no reason, or I've not said shut the fuck up for no reason. Like the only reason I'm going to tell you to shut the fuck up is if you've been talking and talking over me. And if you've turned up late and I've given you a roasting or made you wait outside like a 5-year-old in primary school, then we'll just deal with it. Like it's not my problem you turned up late or you can't shut up. Like, I'm not doing it for no
Well,
reason.
this is it. I think it's
And
brilliant because
and
Mick,
what I would say is from those experiences, I don't go away from that education day or whatever situation it is and think, I don't go and bitch to someone and go, "Oh, do you know what? This guy turned up 20 minutes late, stuck in traffic, showed up with a Costa coffee, couldn't be bothered letting people know that he was late." And I thought, do you know what? He's a proper dickhead. I've never thought that about anyone. I've just gone, turn up late, just wait outside, be with you in a minute.
yeah.
And that's it. I'm gone. Like, I'm done. And if I've told someone to shut up, I just be like, will you shut the fuck up, please? And then carried on. I've never gone away afterwards and gone, fucking hell, that guy always talks, 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 like just dickhead, dickhead, dickhead. I've never labeled them with anything. I've just
Yeah.
kind of gone, will you be quiet? Thank you. Carry on.
Well, this is it. So I think that's what they expect someone to be like overly polite and soft and gentle with them. Like, oh, it doesn't matter that you're a few minutes late. Just take a seat on the empty seat. Don't worry about disturbing everyone else. But the feedback that I get is like they'll walk in and immediately it's like if they're talking, it's like do us a favor, shut the fuck up. You look scruffy, administer yourself, and then sit yourself down. And people like, there's just a gentle, different way about saying it. It's very subtle, but people fucking don't like it. I'm telling you.
It goes from being a polite guiding hand to a slightly firm slap in the face is what it is. And I feel like if you're not holding a high enough standard, like you deserve a bit of a slap in the face.
No, I
Which
agree. I agree. In
no,
fact, actually, I would have some transparency with you here. I was discussing this. I've discussed this a few times over the last days, and I actually think it's far more effective. Less people like it, but it's way more effective by giving them that firm proverbial slap and them not necessarily enjoying it or liking it in the moment, but actually it's the thing that they need to like, shock them into actually changing their actions or doing something a little bit different.
yeah, yeah. Like
What a cute little tangent this is, by the way.
like we'll dial it back to training because obviously this is the podcast where we talk about all things health performance, whether it's mindset training, nutrition. We'll go through all of it, covering a slightly weird one to start with, but we will get on to the main question for today, which is how often you should be strength training. We'll go into that shortly. But I always think that it's a case of if you're kind of handing someone a load of shit and grief and problems, or even actually no, probably more so the people that kind of do things, and if you tell them there and then go that shit, sort it out, they'll go, all right, okay, and they're a bit more awake to it because they're not expecting it. Whereas if you go like you get someone that'll ask you the question and go, how was that? And you kind of go, mm, not unacceptable, but you can definitely do better, or you need to improve on such. It's when you start to let things slide and don't mention it, that's when, if someone does something fucking egregious and you just kind of go, yeah, shrug your shoulders, carry on. That's when you start to get loads more problems.
Agree. And I think it needs to be, it's almost like, this is a really funny thing to say because I've never trained a dog, but almost like training a dog, like there and then is the time, most of the time, not necessarily. Assuming there's not like loads of other people around watching the situation. If it's a one-to-one situation, there and then when you catch them doing the action, like tell them there and then instead of letting something build up or letting it become 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things and then telling them after that. Because by that point, they could have changed their actions like 5 times, 5 mistakes ago.
And
So
actually, the more you let them get away with something before you reprimand them. That's the word, reprimand them. The more you let them get away with it before you then reprimand them, the more they actually start to resent you. Whereas if they just try something and you go, no, that's not happening, you go, oh, all right, fine. I know where the boundary is. I know where the line is. So all about setting standards, expectations, and forming behavior. So like in terms of forming behavior, strength training, we'll get back onto that subject. How often should you be strength training? That's the big question for today. So, Chris, for starters, you start us off. How often are you training?
ooh,
Strength specifically. Like, if we're going to class strength training as, I don't know, do you want to class it as just generally resistance training and put it in the bracket of not just pure nervous system strength work, but also a little bit of hypertrophy and essentially muscle building?
yeah.
Are we going to include that? We'll include, well, yeah, we'll include all of that. General resistance and gym training. So, how often should you be doing it? How often are we doing it? And how often do we program it for all of our clients as well? That kind of stuff today. So, go.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll break it down with us personally first because we're both slightly different. Well, similar athletes, but slightly different sports and stuff. Um, so for me personally, I think what is crucial to understand is I'm different to every other person. My lifestyle is different, and what I am aiming for is very, very different. But for me, doing what I do, which at the minute is I do 3 compulsory strength sessions per week, which include a form of plyometric work, Olympic weightlifting work, skills, and obviously there's mobility and stuff in there as well. Actual strength work, as in like heavy strength. And then there'll be some hypertrophy, some accessory work, which is also still a form of strength work as well. So I aim to do 3 compulsory per week. Plus, then, as we spoke about on the last time we got together, Alex, on 96, when we were saying about doing sport specific stuff, I'm currently aiming to do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week minimum, and I play football once a week minimum as well. So there's a lot of, let's call it fitness slash conditioning slash sport-based work. And then there is 3 compulsory strength sessions too. And the reason for that, for me specifically, is I have found, obviously, coming off the back end of doing a lot of CrossFit stuff, I was doing maybe 10 workouts to 12 workouts a week, which were all incorporating some form of strength work because the sport itself includes strength training and you need to do some form of strength work within the vast majority of those workouts. I'm not at the same point and I'm not doing the same sport and I don't need to be doing the same training. And it is far, I have found harder to be able to do both jiu-jitsu and the same level of strength training I was doing. It's not conducive to not having shoulders that don't work and hips that don't work and still being as strong, etc., etc. So I always think it's what can you recover from? And at this stage, I can recover from 3 strength sessions and then the conditioning sessions, the sports sessions that I do on top of. And I think a key point there is what Alex said in the last podcast, which is if you want to be good at a sport, you should be focusing your training on that sport. And if your strength work is interfering with your skill development and the progress that you make when you do your strength work and your training sessions in the actual like gym in terms of doing your sports work, then you're probably doing too much strength work. So that is why I systemize mine that way. What about yourself? What's yours like? Obviously, playing football for American football for Great Britain, pretty high standard. So for you, how does it look?
So my training pattern at the minute, I mean, I've been struggling over the last few weeks because I've been trying to nurse myself back from a calf injury. So it's really impacted me in terms of like normally I'll go out running with the dog most mornings, just as a good bit of CV and base level fitness. So I've not been able to run, not been able to sprint, I've not been able to jump, I've not been able to do any heavy leg work, I've not been able to do any sled drag, sled pulls. So I've been really, really limited over the last few weeks. But now I'm kind of coming out of that and essentially back to full fitness. Um, the strength routine, it is 5 days a week, and it does vary between movement patterns, as in heavy squats, heavy pulls, heavy push, full body power development, and then a neural drive circuit, which essentially be on the Friday. And I do additional conditioning alongside this as well. So 5 days a week as a rough guide. Some days on a Saturday, I might get an extra day, or it depends if we've got a game the next day. Sometimes I'll just be a long walk and chill with the dog. But as an example for you, Monday would be a heavy squat pattern. Tuesday would be a heavy pull. So that might be a heavy deadlift, heavy RDL, heavy, again, pulls going into upper body pulls as well. So it's essentially a full body session where I might do a pen lay row. I might do, for instance, seated rows, weighted pull-ups, that kind of stuff. Then Wednesday, today, we have a team session in the evening, so I don't want to be too gassed out for that. So it's just been heavy push this morning and then loads of kicking this evening, and I will finish it with, or finish it, we'll intersperse it with a bit of sprinting. So again, some good resistance work in that. And then full body power, which will be tomorrow. This will be, again, going back to similar to day one, but a bit more full body, where it's going to be weighted jumps, might be weightlifting. So hitting some hang power cleans, for example, and looking at a different heavy lift to what I did on Monday. So for instance, if on a Monday, if I do heavy front squats, Thursday I might go with heavy belt squats. So there'll be a change there, but it'll probably still be a squat pattern, whether it's single leg or bilateral. Doesn't really matter too much. I'll try and incorporate a bit of each in each session. And then the final one, a neural drive. This will be more of a conditioning circuit where it's set out of everything is just designed to be fast. Everything is designed to be powerful. There is no fatigue. There is no, well, I say no, there is no fatigue. The aim isn't to be exhausted or tired by the end of it. It's to feel relatively fresh, but have still got some work in. So you're looking at keeping your heart rate relatively low. You don't want to be spiking into the 180s or anything like that. You're keeping it under 140, but you're still moving fast. So jumps, you're still trying to jump as far as you can, as high as you can. Throws, you're looking for maximum height, maximum speed, and basically breaking those down into just different patterns and different requirements through the circuit. So a lot of my clients who I train, if they're listening to this, you will have elements of this in your training already anyway. And that's my structure at the minute. So 2 main sprint sessions per week, one of them at American football training, one of them in that neural drive session on the Friday. And then the rest of it is just for, I mean, realistically, for my position, just for fun. makes relatively little to no difference. I do have some specific kicking exercises in there as accessories, where I'm using the monkey foot for various different things, but not overly complicated, not overcomplicating it. Like this is and this is a big lesson for a lot of people to learn, is that strength should be simple. You can go into special strength exercises, but don't overface yourself with a massive menu of things to do. If your exercise categories are going from A through to G, or one, like block 1 through to 10, you're doing way too much. Some of the most effective strength training sessions that I've ever done have been literally 1 to 2 exercises, one main lift, and then like 2 or 3 accessories.
Yeah, I think just on that last point you made there about like keeping it simple, I really liked something that you said on the last podcast we did, which was you might program for some people to do the program might say back squat, but based on the systemic fatigue and things like that, you might find that they just prefer to do a front squat. And if it's mid-season and looking to maintain stuff like that, then there's no reason they can't just switch it up. I think what a lot of people do is they think, right, what is my sport? Or what is the most demanding, or what can I move the most weight on, which would be the most translatable squat to do for my specific sport, when actually you don't really need to do that. Like we've said, like if you're practicing the sport, practice the sport. If you're trying to practice specifics. When you're in the weights room trying to build strength, you don't need to go out there and practice a Zercher squat because it's a similar position to when you're tackling someone, if that's how you tackle people. Like you practice tackling people, practice hitting people, train your strength, train your power, and do whatever squat you feel like you need to do to train your leg drive and leg power. Like you don't need to overcomplicate it in that sense.
Yeah.
I really like that when you touched on that last week. That was a good one. So looking at that there, like I know for me, it works out as I end up doing 6 or 7 sessions, which is less than I used to do, but still for someone who's not necessarily an athlete, it might seem quite heavy in the week. One thing that you touched on there is you're doing quite a lot of it for fun as well as building on stuff. And I think it's important for people to remember when you are an athlete, in the sense that you are training for a sport or for something to get better at, this is what training looks like. Training looks like you do things specifically to get better rather than just going out and doing anything. And when you are doing all the things that you need to do, all the prerequisite stuff to make sure you get better, you can add the fun stuff in on top of as well if you want, because you've got what you need. It's kind of like the same with nutrition, I think. Like make sure you're getting what you need in there, and then you can add some fun stuff on top of. And you find you're okay recovering from all that volume as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing as well. Like, we're talking like with the main question of being how often should you be strength training? What some of the biggest factors in that are your age and your overall recovery capacity, and then your general levels of stress, lifestyle factors. They all have an impact. Like if you've got a day-to-day job that is, 9 till 5 or 8 till 4, you're running around, maybe you've got kids to look after and that kind of thing. Your capacity to actually recover from doing all those things and the time that you have and the amount of stress that that generates is is quite significant. And then your actual individual recovery capabilities, like your training experience, how long you've trained for, the amount of training volume that you've packed in previously, the higher that is, the bigger your base, the more you can recover from, the more volume you can kind of tolerate. And we know that volume is one of the significant factors that will eventually lead to injury. So again, this is the big difference of like out of season and in season training, pre-season training. Pre-season training, you want to be, or an off-season training, you want to be in a really, really high volume of work in the gym, on the pitch. That way, in season, you're not necessarily detraining or deconditioning because you've built a big base of, general preparation to the table, to the party, so to speak. And your sport specific training can then take over. But in the gym, your overall volume wants to reduce because the amount on the field has massively increased. And you don't want to keep doing the same things that you were doing pre-season and the same volume you were doing pre-season in season, because that is going to break you. Once you start adding more and more and more and taking the volume up and up and up, eventually it's going to blow your brains out. So don't allow that to happen, and make sure like your training is only ever going to be as useful as as long as you can recover from it. So your training is only going to be useful if you can recover from it.
Yeah, and I think there's like I don't know if there is one, but I'm sure you could certainly generate one, like a curve in terms of development and growth. Like obviously the amount of training that you need, the amount of stimulus required will differ based on skill level and all those different things you spoke about. Like if you're a beginner, for example, you don't necessarily need as much of a stimulus. But if you are trying to develop, more often than not, actually what you need is the smallest possible dosage that will yield the biggest results. If you're trying to develop and get better than all the other people that are also doing that, you want the extra smallest dose that you can put on top of that you will still recover from and will yield good recovery and good progress and results in terms of growth over the top of everyone else that's doing the minimum amount. Would you say that's fair?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Because I think your own goals certainly come into play. They're definitely a factor when it comes to how often you should be doing this, or ultimately like what you're aiming for. I said to one of my teammates yesterday because we were talking about training. I was like, "What's your overall goal realistically? What is it you're aiming for?" And he was like, "I want a professional contract playing in Europe, and then I want to see how far I can get from there." So it's like, okay, cool. Well, we know to start with, that's an ambitious goal. It's got professional career written all over the face of it. That means we have to start to embody that professional athlete mindset and lifestyle from now. Like, there's no point training like an amateur if you want to be a pro. Like, you need to bring that pro mentality, that everyday mentality of this is my goal, this is what I'm working on, and I'm always building up towards that. So, understanding that and coming face to face with it is hugely beneficial, and it's very much different. Go on, you've got a question.
Yeah, can sorry to cut you off there, but I wanted to ask a question for you there. Obviously saying about you need to start embodying that professional mindset. Professional to me would mean you are, by having that as a goal, what you're agreeing is like you need to take what you are doing from as an amateur to something that you are working on full time. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that? What would you say that looks like in terms of training sessions and what does it look like in terms of lifestyle? If you are doing it full time, what are the kind of things people need to be thinking about? What is that professional mindset?
So it just means you have to prioritize that. You have to be very, very selfish in the way that you behave because of what you're setting up yourself for the future. So ultimately, like if let's say for most amateurs, you're doing it alongside a full-time job. So you're trying to balance being a professional athlete with working full time, which I know people who've done this. I know Olympic athletes who've done this. Emily Freeman, perfect example. I know you're familiar with Emily and what she did, but as a GB track and field athlete, she was having to work a day job, go down to the track at lunchtime, do her running, go back to work, and then head off to the gym in the evening and train in the gym. And that's literally, well, that would be 5 days a week. And then weekends, it's track and field both days. And then you have to do that whilst making sure your nutrition is on point and you're actually sleeping, which means you don't sit up late at night watching TV. You don't spend hours scrolling, wasting time on your phone. You prioritize the simple things and you do them right, looking after your mindset, focusing on your nutrition, getting your sleep and recovery, taking the supplements that you need to take to help you recover and optimize your performance, and doing the mobility work. Like sometimes, like even just at home, rolling around on the floor, stretching, foam rolling, going getting soft tissue massages, seeking out other professionals to help you. Because this is the other thing as well. Like you can't just be expecting like right professional mentality. Well, look at what professional clubs have. They've got full-time physios, full-time medical staff, they've got full-time nutrition experts. You essentially have to be each one of those people or source out each one of those people for yourself to be able to help you along the way. So that might mean having a coach that writes you your sprint programs, having a coach that writes your training programs, having a coach that goes, here, this is your nutrition template, eat like this is your guide to follow. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one way that I've seen it, obviously through football over the years and things, is looking at when you can see what each different level is. So the top level, so you're talking full-time professionals, and then you can see what some semi-pro athletes are doing. And there's different levels in semi-pro. So there's some teams and some divisions where they're training. In fact, it's very similar to what we were talking about at the start about American football. There's some semi-pro teams who are training 2 or 3 times a week and then they play. And there's some semi-pro teams who meet once a week. Some of them are paid, some of them are unpaid, some of them are full-time, like working other jobs and stuff, and then they train once a week. And I think in terms of professional mindset and stuff, a good way to set yourself apart and move yourself up a level and a level and a level, unless you're like absolutely incredible and you can recover from anything, is you do what the requirements are for the next level up at the level you're at. So say you were currently working with a team that meet once a week and then play once at a weekend. If you play your sport twice a week and then play again at the weekend, and obviously doing your strength stuff and you're on top of things outside of that, you're already looking at putting yourself a level above everyone else in your division, and you're looking at moving towards that next division up, and then you get used to adapting gradually to the demands that are required of you. Were you more successful and performing at a high level, and then you can gradually increase that again. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So as an example, we were talking about this from my exploits in Sweden over the weekend with the Manchester Titans, where we are competing with a semi-professional team that have paid professional athletes on their roster, and we're all amateurs. Like there's no other way to put it. It's like professionals versus amateurs. We are well and truly the underdogs in this situation, and we don't feel like we're actually far away. Like we know where we went wrong. We know the things that we would change, and they're quite easy changes to make. But in order to actually be able to compete and live on that level, there is a huge gap for us to bridge. And we currently have to work out as a team, how do we compete with the same with the guys that are being paid to do it and they're training together 3 times a week versus us who train together once a week and then play on a weekend and against relatively poor opposition where we're not actually being stressed or tested a lot of the time, and most guys aren't getting enough reps under their belt because the game goes by like that. So we've got a lot of problems to solve, and it means going back to what we do in our own time and maximizing that, like maximizing our individual qualities as athletes and then speaking to each other across positional groups to get the very best results and best understanding of what each other's doing all the time without necessarily having to be on the field. So there's definitely changes to make with regards to that. So there's always something you can do. And I think this doesn't get said enough. Like in football, I know a lot of guys who, they'll turn up, they'll go training, and that'll be it. And if the team's training twice a week, that's cool. That's enough for them. And in reality, if you're at that level and you want to stay at that level, fine, carry on. But if you want to push beyond that, like one of my guys who's gone off to play in Sweden, Abs Soto, like he's been training with clubs in the UK. He's been training two times a week with them, playing on weekends, not always necessarily being in the starting squad at the start of this year because he's been quite open and honest that he's going to be moving abroad. So he's kind of been like a second option. But he's kept doing that, training twice a week, playing on a weekend as and when he can. Then he's also been into the gym to see me every week. He's gone off and done the plan on his own more or less every day, where he's had something to do every day, whether it was just sprints and jumps and generally low volume stuff that he's going to be able to recover from, because then he's had his own private football coach as well. So he's practicing things constantly, day in, day out, week in, week out, week after week, to the point where he's in Sweden now and he's performing every week. So that's the levels you've got to go to. Like if you want to stay at the level you're at, fine, carry on as you are. But if you want to push forward, you have to realize you need to, look up a little bit now and again and reassess your habits, reassess your behaviors.
Yeah, I think this is definitely not the point you were trying to make there, but Abs Soto might just be the coolest fucking name I've ever heard.
He's a cool guy. He's a very cool guy.
Stepping up and
I like
doing.
him a lot.
And I think it's liberating because what that says is it's on you and there's more that you can do. It's not the funding, it's not the resources you've got access to. It's you going out, holding yourself to a higher standard and getting shit done. And I think
Always.
in relation to strength training specifically, so I work with different, let's say, populace to the people that you are working with. I'm not training American football players or anything like that. I always think like if you can get people strength training, if they are a beginner, which mostly the people that I work with are, 2 to 3 times a week to start with for strength training, focusing on like building joint tendon strength and then some muscle work as well, whether it's hypertrophy or whatever. But generally speaking, we're looking at actual strength training.
A lot of the time, again, just I know you going down the right route with this, and a lot of the time for those people, just practicing the movements,
Yeah.
just being good at the movement makes you stronger. It's like one of the best examples, American football again. You get players who they've played the game for years. They're no longer necessarily the best athletes. They're not the strongest, but they can very easily be the hardest hitters because they're so efficient at getting in the right position. Their timing, their sequencing of everything is just on point, crisp, and it's just makes a very pleasing sound. So yeah, like very, very much a key thing to get a grasp of, like movement patterns and making sure you've got those nailed.
Well, I think it just comes back to like GPP, general physical preparedness. Like if you were going to take an athlete on to train to a higher level, you first of all need to make sure that they can train to the level that it is going to require of them. Otherwise, you're just going to break them, which is what happens with most new people. They think, okay, I'm going to start training. I want to do 27 workouts a week and eat 4 calories a day. Like it doesn't work that way. You're going to snap quite a lot of things. You just 2 to 3 times a week that you can recover from, make sure you are practicing those movements. And it's like we said on the last one, strength is like neural. Like you are building pathways. A lot of time, and I say this to most of my beginners anyway, like you will feel significantly stronger 3 or 4 weeks in just from practicing the movement 3 times a week than if you did 1 hour big session on it because you're getting way more exposure to practicing that patterning and practicing like obviously your neural pathways are getting stimulated. You just more kinesthesia, more exposure, like it's like drilling reps and things like that. You will get way stronger, you will feel stronger just because you have now got better connections from the brain through the muscular pathway into that muscle to do that specific movement. If you practice it a lot, you will get good at it. If you practice it not a lot, you might still get good at it, but over a prolonged period of time. So 2 to 3 times a week, I would say is the threshold, just so that people can gradually start getting better without hurting themselves. And I think with it being 2 to 3 times a week as well, it's enough so they're not absolutely smashing themselves and it's a low yield, like I said earlier, that you can then build on when you're in a good enough place to then require more demand of yourself. So if you start to want to specialize in something or you want to go and add extra conditioning sessions over here or whatever it is you want to do, you want to get better at this thing, you can then add those extra accessory things or skill-based stuff or extra strength stuff on top of those. And I think when you progress from that pathway of being a beginner and now you are, let's say, intermediate, you can look at doing between 3 and 5 strength sessions and making, again, like you said earlier, making sure that you can recover from those. Because if you can't recover from them, you're actually just smashing yourself to pieces. Yeah, you're doing workouts, but you're not getting better from them. You're just
Yeah.
doing more.
Just digging a big hole. I was gonna say, like, if you've got someone who's a complete beginner, completely new to the gym, 3 days a week is plenty in terms of strength development. Like if you do day on, day off, day on, day off, day on, day off, and then have another day off over the weekend. On those days off, it doesn't mean you do nothing. Like you can still be active, you can still do conditioning stuff, you can still do cardiovascular based work. get your general fitness levels up, because the fitter you are, the faster you are going to recover in between sets of your actual strength work. So then you can look at starting to increase your actual lifting volume. One of the things that I was going to pick up on as well is training environment. So this is something that will massively change the way you look at strength and change the way you practice it, and certainly make a difference as to what level you play at. It's like moving up a league. So you've got different gyms are built for different purposes. Like some of them are little bit uh fancy poser type, big dumbbells that aren't very heavy, that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like the proper like mirror showy, flirty kind of, oh, doesn't it smell nice in here? Like, get out. If there's not blood on the floor and spit on the walls, like it's not a proper gym. I'm joking. But then, if you were to go into like a regular leisure center fitness type place where there's just wall to wall treadmills followed by, a small dumbbell rack with one of each weight, not the optimal environment for developing strength. Could you do it depending on who you are? Yeah. But if you're Eddie Hall and you walk into a place like that, you're going to struggle. So you need to be able to access the correct type of facility to allow you to train efficiently. I say to a lot of my athletes, most regular gyms, especially like leisure centers, fitness centers, health clubs, are not conducive to athletic training. If you haven't got space to run and jump and do plyometric work and throw things, it's going to make things difficult for you, because being an athlete requires you to be explosive. Being incredibly strong requires you to move incredibly heavy weights from A to B. So they need the equipment, you need the space, and you need the environment where you're not going to get told off for shouting, grunting, snorting, spitting, drooling, dropping weights everywhere. So again, another big factor. And then if you go to most proper strength gyms, like I said, blood on the floor, spit on the walls, you know, people's legs left on benches, and like when they've absolutely battered themselves. There's different gyms for different purposes. So find the correct environment, correct facility for you. You don't want to be stepping into a proper strongman gym if your name is Doris and it's your first day training ever and you've never lifted a dumbbell before. That's not the place for you. Like, sure enough, they'll welcome you because everyone's really, really nice. People that train are generally proper sound people. She wouldn't be kicked out, but is it the best environment for her? Probably not to start with.
Yeah, I think it's choosing your environment based on A, what your goal is, and B, what the culture is, and then C, what the goal of that facility is as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of commercial gyms, they are leisure clubs, which are designed around different leisure activities and being social, which isn't a bad thing at all. But their goal is to obviously make money from people going and doing the things there. So if there's a swimming pool and stuff, they want people swimming. Like if you go to a strongman gym, obviously you can expect that you're going to be throwing some heavy kettlebells around, lifting some heavy rocks, and probably hearing some heavy grunts. If you go to an athletics track, you wouldn't expect to see a leg extension and bicep curl rack or anything like that. Like, go based on what your goal is and what the goal of that facility is.
Sorry, a what rack?
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I called it a bicep curl rack. I meant a bicep curl. What it would, I tell you what that was.
You fucker.
That
You
was
absolutely, you are that guy. You,
so.
next time I come in your gym, I'm going to curl in your squat racks.
So this is it. So what I was thinking then was when I said bicep curl, my immediate thought was the people that do bicep curls generally, in my opinion, which by the way is wrong. It's just my opinion. But what I saw was someone stood directly in front of the rack doing bicep curls, because a lot of people that generally do bicep curls do it right on the rack so that they've got access to just chuck them back on there and getting everyone else's weight, and it fucks me off. Sorry, I apologize. That was a bit of a tangent.
It's absolutely fine. You were saying about winding me up before. Sounds like I've plucked on one of yours there. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've got noted down here kind of 7 main factors that will influence sort of how often you should be strength training. So I'll just rattle those off one by one. I think we've pretty much covered most of them. Some of them are a bit of a 2-in-1 jobby as well. So number 1 is your overall training experience, your background, your kind of base level of preparedness, overall fitness. that's going to have an impact on how often you can physically get it done. As we said, the less experience you have, the less you're actually required. You could do something every single day, but that just means if you were to go 5 days a week, you would do less in each of those sessions. So your overall work capacity through the week is very, very similar to someone that does 3 days a week. So would you rather do a little bit more on those 3 days and have a day off in between? Or would you rather do a little bit less and go in every single day? Completely up to you. For me, I would go um, heavy, day off, heavy, day off, heavy. And on those days off, that's when I'd add in some conditioning work. Your training goals, as I mentioned, they will determine how often you need to be training. If you're leading into a competition, if you wanted to get a pro contract, you need to start embodying the habits and the mentality and doing the things the way they need to be done to achieve that level of performance. The actual training intensity and volume within the program. So if you're very low volume and very, very high intensity, you can probably go in with higher frequency. If you go in high intensity, high volume in a training session, you are probably going to need a day of recovery in between. Like dialing this back to that beginner example we've just been speaking about. If you've got someone who's got a background of zero intensity and zero volume, and then go, bang, here's a strength session, or here's a resistance training session, 1 hour, beat the crap out of them. That for them is going to be very high intensity, high volume compared to what they're used to. If you were to give me or Chris the same training plan and the exact same weights, would find it very, very different, very, very different stimulus. However, if we were to work at the same percentages, so if it was like 80 to 90% plus of 1RM, we could find a way to suffer with that, but we would also recover faster due to that experience and the overall conditioning we have. Then age and recovery, that's going to be a factor. So age is going to slow you down a little bit. So just be mindful, be smart. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can get away with training like an imbecile. Typically you can, but it's not the most effective way to actually get results. So
Short term, I'd like to just add, you get away with training like an imbecile. Short term, it comes back and gets you about 3 years later. Speaking from experience, thank you.
yeah, definitely. Your quality of nutrition and sleep, huge, huge factors. If you're going into your training sessions feeling tired, groggy, sore constantly, that is a problem. You need to be going in feeling relatively fresh, relatively sparky, and up for it. Like you want to be feeling energized going into it to make sure you get the best out of your session. Overall stress, day-to-day stress, and lifestyle factors. Again, jobs, work commitments, travel, family obligations. Those are things that for someone's wanting to push that professional level, certainly the family obligations have to take a bit of a slide. And the things that, if it's not going to contribute towards where you want to get to, you do have to park it. You do have to prioritize all the little bits that are going to add up to where you want to be in the long term. And then the final one that I'd got noted down was your own individual recovery capabilities. So if you're someone who's juicing off your face, get in the gym 3 times a day, 3 hours at a time, train nine hours a day, 7 days a week, do it. Most people aren't doing that, so our recovery capacity is relatively normal and not necessarily excessive. So you need to be mindful of those factors and ultimately know yourself, analyze yourself as an athlete, and focus on playing the long game. That's where strength lives. Strength is a long-term development project, not just I need to be really strong at the age of 16. Bang, go. No, don't do that.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely would not change anything from that list. I think one thing that might be important, if anyone out there is using extra saucy stuff, like your muscles will feel and your movements might feel stronger faster than your joints and tendons, and everything will get fitter and stronger as well. So generally you will feel like you can keep up in the weights, but eventually that niggle in your shoulders getting a bit worse, the niggle in your hips is getting a bit worse. And I think one of the big things that we see nowadays, especially with the evolution of hybrid training, which is kind of taking over a little bit, is people think you should be training like 90% intensity 7 times a week. Well, actually, if you were looking in elite sport, you would find that you have periodizations and actual plans. Like it's not just a bunch of people going out there and smashing their workout every single day as hard as they can. It's there's a plan. Okay, on this day we go this hard. On this day we bring it back slightly, and think if you're smashing extra stuff, yeah, you might recover, but you've got nowhere to go from there. If you're going to try and peak for a competition, what's your plan? You already train 10 times a week. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you can't go harder. You already go as hard as you can every time. You've got nowhere to go from there. You've got no extra room for development. It's actually better to be smarter, train a little bit less to the intensities that you should be training to. And this is why coach is really important. This is why the role of Alex doing strength and conditioning for GB footballs and stuff like that is so important. It's not just, okay, this guy trains 10 times a week as hard as he can. He's not going to do as well as someone who trains 3 to 5 times a week, does the adequate sport stuff, recovers, looks after himself, and gets actual professional guidance on his skill work and stuff like that, because clearly that's a better avenue to go down. So just keep that in mind when you decide what you're going to do here. Alex, you look like you caught on something there. You had something to say?
Yeah, it's going on my head. I can't really remember what it was. You were talking about hybrid athletes.
About peaking for competitions and stuff like that. I think it was around then.
Peaking for competitions. It was something to do with that. It was something to do with competitions. Got it. I've got it. I'm back. Right. So this is the thing. Obviously, I train in a CrossFit gym, work in a CrossFit gym. I deliver my strength and conditioning project in there. Well, it's the first time I've ever called it a strength and conditioning project. My strength and conditioning programming project, performance program project. Might go with that. That's where I operate. That's my main base of working. And when I'm in there and I'm training, I have had people come up to me and comment and be like, "What are you doing today?" And I'll tell them, I'm like, "Oh, did you do that last week as well?" And I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, I've got a bit of this today, a bit of that." And it's almost like there's just like a list of exercises written down the wall, and they've just gone and thrown a fucking dart at it and gone, right, that. Oh, what's my format? Shall I go emo man wrap for time, chipper, what like, and just go, bah, you go, oh, good one, yeah, let's do that. And it's just random shit piled together to go, right, there's my workout. And there is a difference between a workout and a training plan. And realistically, for me, that whenever someone is in the gym, I should be able to watch them training. If I catch them the next week, I should be able to see them doing, personal preference, I should be able to see them doing something similar or progressive compared to what they did last week. And I can go, oh, that makes sense. They're doing more work in a shorter period of time, or they've increased the weight on that. They've reduced the reps and increased the number of sets. Like, yes, this has a theme to it. Like they're actually trying to improve a specific aspect of performance or a specific aspect of their fitness. And a lot of the time there is no theme, there is no kind of progressive overload, so to speak. It's just like a continuous barrage of just go 10 out of 10 on this, 10 out of 10 on this, 10 out of 10 on this, 10 out of 10 on this. And you're not actually laying any smaller bricks to hold the wall up and keep everything solid. So yeah, you don't just be like random sporadic training programs. If someone's coming up to you and going, "Oh, you did that last week," or you're looking at your training program, did that last week, and get a bit bored of that. If you're getting bored of it, yes, you can change it for the sake of changing it and making it more interesting and fascinating. But there should be a theme to your training. You should feel like you're actually making progress in specific exercises week on week. And sometimes it can be as simple as just changing the order of your exercises. I've done this with people where I've kind of programmed on a 2-week rotation. So there'll be week 1 and then week 2, that'll be different. But then week 3 will be very, very similar to week 1. Week 4 will be very similar to week 2. And I have programmed on that kind of pattern before just to give that kind of illusion of a bit more variety and that slight change up of exercises from week to week whilst maintaining that theme. But as an example of just changing up the exercises, some days it might be a very heavy strength exercise followed by explosive jump. And then the next week, I might just go, right, similar reps. I'm going to change them or add another set, But this time we're going to go and flip explosive jump at the start, heavy lift second. And there are simple things you can do to consistently pull your athlete in different directions or pull your performance forwards without having to just go exact same plan, exact same plan, exact same plan, completely different, completely different, completely different. Like the best kind of mesh is somewhere in between those two. So I'm not saying I've got all the answers, but that for me, I should be able to look at someone training and go, yep, I see what you're aiming for, rather than going, what the fuck is this guy doing this week?
Yeah, and I think it's even it's crucial all the time if you're looking to actually train. But if you are like we were talking about a beginner and you are practicing movements, that is your strength training. Like it absolutely needs to be somewhat the same slash similar. Because how do you practice a movement if every session is completely different movements at max intensity when you've not even actually got refined motor patterns to execute the movements that you're currently doing to a high level at low intensity? So trying to smash 300 reps of it at high intensity is just daft. I'm not going to say any names here, but let's say an undercover member from our gym went to a different gym and was interested in doing one of their like class program things. And they went in and they were a beginner and they were programmed, and I want to know your opinion on this, 30 snatches for time.
Go home. Just go home. You don't need to be there for that. What's the point? You're not a weightlifter. Unless like, are you actually going to try and improve your snatch? Is the snatch session is the session based around snatching? Are there specific drills in there to improve your snatch, or is it just go in and sling a barbell over your head as many times as you can, as fast as you can, without much coaching or guidance? Like just go home. Like it's not general lifestyle based fitness, that is it? If you're doing CrossFit, I can understand it as being part of a WOD. I get that. But if you're general public, general population, what the hell are you doing? Just leave.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it works as a tester if you are a CrossFitter. And like the only way I could see it being in any way relevant is you do it like on like one of your first 10 sessions absolutely horrendously. And if you somehow don't get injured or damage yourself, you get a score. And then 6 months down the line, when you've done some snatch skill work and some aerobic fitness and some triple extension work and practice your overhead mobility and stuff and done some patterning based work, then you could be like, okay, I did it again and it took me like you knocked 25 minutes off your time because you actually had a clue what you were doing. But there's no accurate way of measuring what you've actually improved there other than
Well, but also you've just become more efficient at snatching. But also, like to assess someone's ability to snatch, there's a lot that goes into weightlifting in terms of your posture, your sequencing, movement pattern. Like there's so much more low hanging fruit than going for the top of the tree and just going, right, let's day one, let's snatch. I don't get it. No need. Um anyway,
that's
that's
one
kind of yeah, that's a good one to finish on that. So that kind of covers us for today for how often you should be strength training. If you're still confused or you still have any questions about how often you should personally be strength training, then please get in touch with us. Instagram is the place to go for that. Alex_Lenkowski_performance for myself, and for Chris, same thing. Chris_Lenkowski_performance. And hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have enjoyed it, please feel free to share it with someone. If it has answered some questions and enlightened you, please again share it with someone. Give us a 5-star review if you feel like it. Don't be the guy that drops us 1 or 2 stars. That's just a dick move. We don't like that. That's just
unless you've got some genuine constructive feedback.
yeah.
Then
Yes. And if you think you could do better, then feel free to come on as a guest and co-host, present, or edit for us. That would be lovely.
you say
Anyway,
100 is coming up, so it could be you.
that concludes today's episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. We look forward to having you back on. And again, thank you very, very much. I never say this often enough because I always assume like whenever we're talking and whenever I'm doing this, like no one's ever around. So it's like it's just me on my own or me and you together. But obviously, like when I look on the stats on the website and on the hosting site, I'm like, fucking hell, like, yeah, people are actually listening to it, which is really cool. So massively, massively appreciate it. So if you are that person, if you are listening to this, thank you very, very much. And if you've stuck with us for the 97 episodes that we've recorded so far, then we are both eternally grateful. We massively appreciate it, especially to our one listener down in South America. I'm joking. No, we've got more than one listener in South America. We still do get quite a few downloads down there. So yeah, like it's weird actually being like seriously, like we are global. We've hit every single continent, Chris. When I look at the stats, I'll share them with you when we're off from this later, but we have hit every single continent. So wherever you're listening from, wherever you are in the world, whatever's going on in your life, thank you very, very much for having us as part of it. We are here to help. So let's keep moving forwards. Anyway, till next time, that is it from me, Chris.
Yes. Goodbye from me. Goodbye from us. Lenko out.